Hey, things are not what you think.
Yeah, there's always something you don't know.
Welcome to Joey's Real Talk.
老外大声说。
Yes, Lady Gaga to start our show today, and as she always says in her songs, don't be a drag, just be a queen. Be someone you want to be and be confident about who you are. That is our conversation today here at the fourth hour, the final hour of the midday show. For another episode, this will be episode 3 of the midday show Real Talk, as we once again invite our news team extraordinaire, Nancy Sun and Philip Prasad. Welcome. Hello.
Why do you always say Philip's name like
He
in
really
the wrong
wants to be
way?
friends. I don't know. It's a really cool name. Thank you. First time I've ever heard it, to be honest. Okay, so today we're going to talk about same-sex marriage equality. This is a hot topic in Taiwan as of late. Yes. And we just finished our first Supreme Court hearing last Friday. Many more to come, and we hopefully can come to a conclusion, hopefully a good one, by sometime maybe in June or July. All right, so let's start with that and go into the intro of our Real Talk right here at ICRT.
Hey, things are not what you think.
Yeah, there's always something you don't know.
Welcome to Joey's Real Talk.
老外大声说。
Hey, I'm never gonna get enough of that, and Philip is always gonna hate it.
We actually have our one of our DJs, Joseph Lin, is watching us right now, and he says, "You scared me on that loud shout out, Joey."
Oh, sorry, Joe.
Not Philip's shout, but your shout.
I got a little too excited. Joe, aren't you supposed to be driving over? Should you really be watching us on Facebook Live right now? All right, so as I already set things up, today's talk is about marriage equality, and here in Taiwan, it's a hot topic. So we've got, I think, 6 or 7 interviewees to help us out. And we also try to cover our bases in terms of the countries they're from, because there are countries like South Africa, countries like the UK, who've been ahead of the game in terms of legalizing same-sex marriage. So let's quickly run through some of the interviewees we have. Again, we're not going to share any names, and we're not going to tell you who's sharing which opinion pieces. We're going to let you kind of guess or figure out who might be who. So this time we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 interviewees. One of them is about 43-year-old American Taiwanese, bachelor degrees and law school, agnostic, and he is gay. And the second one is about 40 to 50 from Britain or the UK, PhD, no religious belief, and heterosexual. One is 25-year-old British, bachelor degree education with no religious beliefs and heterosexual. I think this time we wanted to include the education level because we think it might have something to do with how they, how they think, I suppose.
Right.
Okay, so a few more. 27-year-old American bachelor degree agnostic, heterosexual. 28-degree American bachelor degree secular humanist. That one actually confused me. I'm not quite sure what that really.
I think that
Secular humanist.
secular means obviously no religion,
Right.
And I guess humanism just means that they believe in humanity.
Humanity. Okay.
Oh.
Heterosexual and actually 2 more. 25-year-old American Puerto Rican African.
Wow.
Bachelor agnostic lesbian. And then 21-year-old Canadian Chinese bachelor degree, no religious beliefs, and gay. So we really cover our bases in terms of the LGBTQIA and the straight communities.
Okay, and we're also getting some responses already on Facebook Live. So if you want to tell us what your opinion is, or if you want to tell us, or even read what other people are saying, head over to the ICRT Facebook page, and then you can look at our live broadcast and see what people are saying.
Right. Okay. Now let's get started with the first question we asked our interviewees. As last Friday, the panel of judges at Taiwan's Supreme Court began hearing deliberations on the case of same-sex marriage. If this bill is passed, Taiwan could become the first Asian country to legalize same-sex marriage. So we asked our interviewee, in light or maybe because they can think about and compare to their countries, can they tell us how the attitude towards same-sex equality or marriage equality back at home compare to Taiwan? Okay, so let's listen to it first, and then Nancy and Phil and I will have a little chat about it. And I've only got 2 hands, so I'm trying to work everything at the same time. So here we go.
I think the UK generally is more tolerant towards same-sex marriage not everywhere and not everybody, but I think in general, people are kind of willing to accept that it is no big deal, really, to allow same-sex marriage.
I think England are more open to talk about it and more willingly accept it than Taiwan right now.
I believe that the attitudes towards gay rights in general in Taiwan on an everyday basis is actually more progressive than the U.S. And I'm in fact quite surprised that there has not yet been marriage equality here. The attitudes here on a daily basis, I feel far more accepted and far more safe being out as part of the LGBTQ community here in Taiwan than I ever did back in the U.S. I'm very excited, and I believe that LGBTQ marriage is something that will be passed in the near future here.
The attitudes in Taiwan and the attitude in the United States are kind of similar, where you have rural areas or maybe parts outside of bigger cities that disagree with same-sex marriage, and you might have bigger cities who are more open or positive towards same-sex marriage. And even though they're vastly different sizes, the U.S. and Taiwan, I think you can find people from each side of the argument in both countries. And I've met people who feel strongly about both arguments in both the United States and Taiwan. So I think it's very similar.
I would say that the general public's attitude in China toward marriage equality would be somehow more conservative comparing to Taiwan. Both people grew up in a time when homosexuality was criminalized by the Chinese government. But just like in anywhere else, the young generation tends to be more open-minded in this kind of issue. And I do know there are many NGOs and celebrities working on this subject, trying to legalize same-sex marriage in China. But obviously, China still has a long way to go in order to achieve marriage equality.
Okay, so there you go. Right off the bat, we had, I think, 4 or 5 interviewees in that little segment right there. Difference in opinions already, and it seems like it's really driven by or based on what country you're in, right? I think maybe same-sex marriage is more or less an institutionalized idea. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, I would say it seems that most people seem to think that it's more favorable in Taiwan.
Right.
But I would actually have to more agree with the second to last speaker, where she says that it's about the same. Because I think the acceptance level is about the same. If you were to poll people, we'd probably get about the same. But it's the quality of their acceptance or opposition that is different.
Okay.
For example, in North America, there still are cases of gay bashing. So people can be very vocal in their support. They will be loud in support of LGBTQ. But then you can also get violence against it. Whereas in Taiwan, people may or may not speak about it, but you could walk down the street holding the hand of someone of the same sex and not need to worry about perhaps getting attacked physically.
I think maybe we should ask ourselves this question: is it Taiwan is more acceptable, or that we're just less vocal and less expressive about our opinions? And maybe this could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing, because when you don't talk about something, you will never resolve the conflicts or problems.
Right, and when you're not vocal about something, then change doesn't happen. So.
Okay.
Yes.
And from that first bit, I also noticed that 2 things. It seems like the young generation are more open-minded about topics of same-sex marriage. And then it seems like people from bigger towns, from bigger metropolitan areas are more acceptable to the ideas, just judging from what our interviewee said.
Yeah.
Nancy, anything in the chat?
We already have a comment on Facebook Live and on our Facebook page, and it's from Chie Xuan Johnny, and he says, I think that people should love others with, I think he means no discrimination on gender, so I will have a full support of marriage equality.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, very straightforward.
But as you can hear, as we dig deeper and deeper into this issue at hand, is that it's not just about who you love, how you love. It's also about how this could be implemented in a legal manner. Okay. So the second question we asked our interviewees is do you have personal experiences or stories to share regarding the social climate for LGBTQIA communities in your country of origin, and maybe compare that to your experiences here in Taiwan. And let's hear a little bit about that from our interviewees right here.
I do believe because I grew up in New York, I experienced a very liberal view towards it, and that why shouldn't it happen? But I do know that when you get into more close-knit communities, smaller towns and communities, there's this feeling that something changes when you allow something that hasn't been for so long to happen. And of course, I know one of the biggest counter-arguments towards marriage equality is the Bible or religion, and that it was said marriage is between a man and a woman. So in terms of like United States versus Taiwan, I believe it's about the same. Some people always support it and some people are always against it. And I think that is for any controversial issue that we have as social communities.
Growing up as an LGBTQ adolescent wasn't particularly difficult because I was very lucky to have an incredibly supportive family. However, the religious right and just general conservative bias of most people in North Texas, where I was from, was quite difficult growing up. I did run away to Austin, Texas as soon as I could, which was a liberal bastion in Texas, and living there was much better, but you kind of lived with the constant knowledge that the rest of the state wished you didn't exist. So coming to Taiwan, where everyone has been so accepting and I'm able to be out with my girlfriend at the MRT with no problems, it's just been a huge blessing.
I felt very upset when my parents started attending a church that openly spoke out against same-sex marriage, and I thought that was very at odds with what I felt. As I grew up, I met more and more LGBTQIA people, or people who identified as such, and felt very comfortable in those kind of community because they were much more welcoming than the church my parents had exposed me to.
One of my relatives is gay, and when the family told us, it was like a big dirty secret. And there were, at the time, a lot of stigma attached to the idea of homosexuality in general. You know, it was a very shameful thing. I lived with that relative for a period of time and came into contact with the gay community when I was 16 years old. It didn't make me gay, but what it did do is open my eyes to my own ignorance of the situation.
Okay, there you go. So once again, it seems like the small town, big town argument comes into play once again. For one or two of our interviewees from New York, there is a clear differentials in terms of their experiences compared to, say, smaller towns in Texas. What do you guys think?
Well, I liked the last point that the male speaker said. He said that it opened his eyes, when he was in contact with people from this community, it opened his eyes to his own ignorance. And I feel like anything that has to do with diversity and acceptance of other people, it is always about ignorance when you hate. So once your eyes are open to it, like he said, I mean, you're not ignorant anymore, and that ignorance can never come back. I mean, once you know something, it doesn't disappear. So I feel like progress in this direction is always going to be a one-way street. It's always going to be in the direction from hate towards acceptance.
Right. So I think part of what you're saying is like when you're talking about ignorance and hate, you're talking about how people don't know some people might not know an LGBTQIA person personally, and when you get to know somebody on a personal level like that, it's maybe possibly more difficult to mark them as other.
That's true. I just recently read one of those motivational quotes on Instagram, and this one I think really applies. It says, promote the things you love and don't criticize the thing you hate. Spread positive energy around. And agreeing with Phil is that if you teach your children to love everybody, it's going to be a lot easier for them to pinpoint the things that don't work out. Instead of teaching them to hate everybody and then, getting them to love someone is going to be much difficult if that's your basis to work with.
Yes.
We also have somebody else on Facebook, Nicholas Chen, who says, so glad and appreciate seeing you bring attention to this issue. And Jim Tai says, love this new segment. Go ICRT. We love you too.
Hey! Jim, I actually know Jim, who's avid listeners of ICRT. All right, so this once again, we can't just credit it to the show. We have to, holla and of course give our thanks to all of our interviewees who participated in this really a social experiment week after week to give us their contribution, their opinion pieces. Okay, the third question we asked our interviewees is, what are some misconceptions that you know of floating around out there about opposing or legalizing gay marriage, or I should say same-sex marriage here? And I think there's a lot out there, and there's pretty much not enough time here on the air to talk about every one of them. So yeah, let's listen to some of them brought forth by our interviewees.
Now, some of the misconceptions that I know stand out there are that children raised by same-sex couples will end up gay themselves. I've also heard of lesbians seek out same-sex relationships only after having bad experiences with men. That gay and lesbian parents differ from heterosexual in their parenting skills. But nonetheless, I don't think any of those misconceptions have scientifically been proven.
Misconceptions? Well, there are plenty out there. I mean, the religious arguments that only a man and woman should be allowed to be married because that's what it says in a Bible, that it's going to somehow corrupt the young, it's going to corrupt the innocent, it's going to make other people gay. If they have children, their children will be gay. Really dark age kind of thinking. I remember an article in the Taipei Times about the protests a few months ago, and it literally was like reading something from the dark ages.
The arguments I've heard about same-sex marriage coming from Taiwan have been about people marrying a bicycle or something. Same-sex marriage just kind of opens this can of worms, allowing people to marry things that are unnatural, and I think that is just ludicrous. Like, no one is going to marry their bicycle. Someone is going to marry the person that they love, someone that they want to spend their time with. It's not going to be as treacherous as a lot of opposing arguments have made it out to be.
Here, besides the fallacy of, oh, if gay couples adopt children, they're going to turn them gay, which has just been proven wrong by science again and again, is also this slippery slope fallacy. There's a belief among the religious right and many social conservatives that, well, if we legalize gay marriage, it's just a next step to legalizing bestiality and incest and polygamy and all these other big, scary, concepts that they can drag out to get in the headlines. It's just, again, a straw man argument. To have marriage between consenting adults is just, to be able to compare that to bestiality and everything else is just a waste of time.
Let me just quickly address a couple of things said in that segment. One is the bicycle comment, along with the Ferris wheel comment.
Yes.
They didn't make it up. This has been said by government officials.
Not government officials.
It
was one of the members of the Hujiaomeng.
Right.
His name is Zhang Shouyi.
And
the English is family protection.
The Family Protection Alliance, but I mean, it's just a direct translation.
Right. And I mean, I love my bicycle, but this is just a very interesting
excessive
comparison,
Yeah.
And also at the very end, I really love how finally someone brought it up. If you understand the concept of critical thinking, there are a couple of theories. One is slippery slope, and one is the straw man argument. Slippery slope, for example, it is exactly what it is that you assume that one thing is going to lead to another thing is going to, of course, naturally lead to the third thing, and eventually, before you know it, the world's coming to an end.
And, I mean, even looking at the current state of things, it's already proven wrong.
Right.
Because if you follow their logic, just legalizing homosexual or same-sex marriage will automatically result in people marrying objects or animals is already been proven wrong, because homosexual same-sex sexual acts were previously illegal, and legalizing them did not legalize bestiality or other, obscene acts.
Right. So I feel like, again, back to, people not understanding, it seems like now we're just fabricating fantasies.
Yes.
That's not there. Any comments? That's,
I do think that there are people out there, a lot of people out there who have differing opinions on this issue. Actually, one of them, okay. There's somebody coming over on Facebook Live, and he says people are just scared because they don't know about LGBTQIA+ very well. And they're saying that some of these groups are actually spreading fear and hatred.
Right. So, okay, that's what we're going to get to eventually at the tail end of this this conversation. But so far, it's been about opinions, right? It's about people's opinions and people's projections of things. We finally asked the more, how should I put it, the more, I guess, pragmatic question is many people
the crux of the problem here.
Exactly. many people are still undecided on whether same-sex marriage should be implemented through separate laws or through changing the civil code or even the Constitution. So what do our interviewees think? And this is where we're going to find out. This is the final question for them.
I'm definitely more conservative on this point. I don't care how it gets done, as long as it gets done. My main concern is that if I were to die tomorrow, my partner gets to make those decisions, just as if I was in a heterosexual relationship. I don't want the fact that because someone believes my relationship is invalid to affect the future of myself or my partner, or God forbid, if I were to have children, those children. If you need to make a separate law to get it done, fine, just get it done. That's all I care about. Get it done. Save these relationships, protect these relationships, offer the same protection you would a heterosexual relationship.
I don't believe that you should make a new law for same-sex marriage. To me, marriage doesn't have a race. Marriage doesn't have a religion. Marriage doesn't have an ethnicity. To me, marriage is a bonding between two people, whether that be same-sex or whether that be the opposite sex. Why are we trying to separate? Again, we're just dividing the homosexuals go on one side and heterosexuals go on another side, and I don't believe that we should be doing that. Just one for all, and I think everybody should be allowed to live by the same law, that everybody can get married. So I guess in a way I disagree that it should be given as a separate law. We shouldn't be separating people anymore. We should be coming together.
The whole idea of legislation is to be inclusive. It is about equality for every single individual in the nation, no matter your gender, your cultural background, or sexual orientation. The civil code in Taiwan only allows heterosexual marriage, and this is obviously in opposition to the idea of equality. If the truth is this piece of legislation has been discriminating sexual minority in the country over the past 80 years, then I believe amending the civil code would be a great way to apologize and say sorry to those people being discriminated. Having a separate law is not about equality. It will only create another layer of discrimination.
I think it is very important to amend the civil code to reflect same-sex marriage as being constitutional, because without amending the civil code, it seems to me like there could potentially be a gray area where people who are LGBTQ could be discriminated against, whether it be through their job or their housing or their social circle. And keeping something for the sake of tradition or keeping something the same as it's been for so many years is never really a good reason to continue doing something.
Okay, so I just also want to read out Ye Jing on Facebook Live says, I think marriage equality is the way to maintain the basic rights and interests of people, especially LGBTQIA, but there are some people who were raised by traditional concepts that people say marriage equality will cause moral corruption. I think he's saying that that's what some other people are saying. And then I also want to point out that we are, do we have, because a lot of our interviewees, it seems like they have a lot of personal experience with LGBTQI and misconceptions or discrimination. Do we have a voice of opposition?
Well, we did try to seek out voices of opposition. Couldn't get a recording. We did find candidates, couldn't quite get a recording. So we're just going to say that we're aware that there are different views out there. And certainly if you have a different view, please present that to us on Facebook Live. We're looking for exactly what you have to say, and hopefully we can share with our listeners.
Yeah, and I think our intent for this segment is not to encourage our listeners to, go at each other or have an argument about this. We do want to say this is an issue that's affecting everyone in Taiwan right now. It's relevant, it's in the news, and we want to hear what everybody has to say. And we hope that other people, both sides, all sides of the table, can come together and listen to everyone's opinions and everyone's personal experience.
Because maybe you'll hear something you've never thought of before.
Yeah, right. If you never talk about it, you'll never resolve the conflict. The first step to solving a problem is to recognize that there is one to talk about. And I have to say, after doing this segment myself, I have been convinced of something entirely different, because my elders in my family, they are not exactly against same-sex marriage, but they say that the civil codes of many should not be determined by the demands of few. And so I've always thought that, okay, maybe there is some truth to that argument until today, where I heard some of our interviewees' opinions, and I thought, you know what, ideas like division, like discrimination, like inequality, etc., I think those ideas are better if the government put their fist down and say, you know what, we're going to illegalize it, and then it'll make it a lot easier in the future for these sort of negative facets to be erased more quickly, for people to talk about things instead of pointing fingers at one another. So this is not just about marriage equality, it's about the first step to presenting all sorts of problems with each other and talk about it openly.
Of course, because when you say the majority and the minority, on what lines are you talking about? Right now we're talking about on sexual orientation, but tomorrow what if it was on ethnicity?
Right.
Or what if it was on your economic level?
Right.
So the lines are changing all the time. So it is the government's job to protect its people.
Okay, so I think we have, do we have more comments from Facebook that we might want to share? Yeah.
There's one I'm not sure. Camilla Tung says, one of my students said to me, I support same-sex marriage. I wonder how old the student is. But I just cannot imagine how they will have their intimate actions.
Oh, gosh. They might be too young to imagine that right now.
No, but I think it's a natural
It's a natural
and
question,
healthy
yes. But that shouldn't factor into the legal questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Curiosity, I suppose.
Curiosity, sure.
That's why.
That's fine.
Okay, so during our process of getting interviewees and opinion pieces, I got 15.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah. See, you're too young. You should think about mom and dad first, and then you don't want to think about it anymore, right?
Let's not go there.
Okay.
Okay, so during this whole process, I got a soundbite from someone named Jay, and I think he really concluded the whole discourse rather well. So let's set this up. Who is Jay? I think Phil can cover that for us.
Jay Lin is a father of two. He's rather a large name in the media here in Taiwan. He has a company called Portico Media. It's a TV network. And he also created Haha Tai, which you may have seen on YouTube. It is a comical YouTube channel.
Okay.
He's also the founder and creator of the Taiwan Queer Film Festival and the Queer Mosa Awards. Queer Mosa obviously being Formosa and queer put together. I think this year or last year it would be now was the first time that they had it.
Okay. So here is Jay's summary, really, for our Real Talk conversation of the day.
In Taiwan, there are already over 100 gay families and about 200 children who are living under gay households. And if we're looking at the U.S., there are currently 300,000 children living under gay households. And statistics show that these children are living happy, healthy lives just like everybody else. And so that is one big misconception that I would like to clear up, since I am a gay dad of twins myself. I think many people, especially the older people who don't live in the urban centers, think that they don't know any gay people in their lives, although they probably know many. They're just not out to them. And it is important in a situation like this that I do all that I can to produce videos and stories and depictions of LGBT people working in society, living in society, being parents, being lovers, and wanting and deserving the same rights as everybody else, to be protected under the institution of marriage and to be granted the same rights as everybody else. And so I think the more one knows, the less one fears. So it is a process that will keep on evolving, and we'll keep on fighting until we get to the ultimate goal.
All right, I agree with the last point. Is education is very important. Doesn't matter what issues you're talking about, always try to understand both sides of the stories. And when you think you're confident to say that I've understood both sides of the stories, then you can make your
an informed decision.
Right. Exactly. So to educate and to make people understand, and most importantly, to make people fear less of something that they don't know about.
So I do want to point out that we really do appreciate everyone's opinion, and we did try to get a spectrum of all different sides of the discussion. And so we really appreciate that people on Facebook Live came and shared their opinions, whether it was they were on one side of the issue or the other. And so we were really grateful that you were sharing. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so let's wrap things up. And once again, you can continue to make comments even after our Facebook Live has completed. And so continue to do that and share your thoughts with us. And this is the third episode, actually, of Real Talk today about same-sex marriage. Thank you so much for joining us. And big thanks to all of our interviewees for joining us in the discussion.
And our producers.
Yvonne.
And Mike.
Mike. And to Nancy, Philip. And I like to thank myself. Anyway, let's take a short break. We'll be right back with more musical things on here on our Midday Show on ICRT. Hello, handsome and gorgeous. Thank you for watching our video. If you like more general shenanigans or artist interviews, please make sure you click to the next video. But also make sure you subscribe to us by pressing the bell button down here, because we like to tell you more about fun stuff coming up.